Okay, in this particular lecture we're going to have a look at Agile and Lean software development. It's the first of three, and here we're going to set out some of the foundational elements in which Agile and Lean rests upon, and in particular teasing out a few things that will be of use to us within this particular project. But we'll start off first of all looking at Waterfall, as this is a good context within which then to view Agile and Lean. Waterfall, you'll all be aware of it. It's I suppose it's the traditional de facto old way of creating software. And the subtitle here is particularly relevant, it's reasonably generous to Waterfall, that it's been overly optimistic. That's a nice way of describing what the Waterfall model is like, or what it tries to achieve. It has been used for many, many years, and alongside that there have been successes, but there's also been major failings where billions of pounds have been spent in software, but nothing particularly useful has been delivered at the end. This is not to say that it is entirely useless. There are still projects where it is a perfectly sensible and reasonable way of creating software, but it's not suited to all. So the graphic you can see here on the slide, it gives you a breakdown of how the Waterfall Waterfall model works. We'll go through our planning phases, requirements gathering phase, where we're sort of extracting what it is the client wants. We're then analysing and designing that in terms of what type of software will provide what the client wants. We're then giving that to programmers and testers who will go ahead and produce it. And then finally, we get the user to sign off on it, and we deploy it into whatever environment it needs to be deployed. On the surface, sounds and looks perfectly reasonable, perfectly logical. The problem with Waterfall is that it makes a number of assumptions, and if those assumptions don't hold, then we've got a problem. So let's have a look at three of the assumptions. First one is that it assumes that users they can accurately and precisely define what it is they need, what it is they want, and they can do this without actually having seen any running software or using the software. So if I'm commissioning some software, and I might, let's say, want to produce in 6 months' time, and it's a new piece of software, Waterfall assumes that I have a remarkably clear and precise idea of what exactly it is that I want, and I can notionally, if you like, see that inside my head. I can step through all of the different parts of it. I can talk about it in a lot of exact detail. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. If I can't, then we have a problem. Waterfall also assumes that the environment within which we're sort of creating the software, that it's going to remain stable. It's not going to significantly change. So, for example, the budget that maybe I have for creating software, it's not going to grow or shrink. That the environment into which I'm trying to then release that software, it could be a work environment, it could be a market I'm selling into, again, isn't going to significantly change. And the further out the software is to be delivered, so it could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be 2 years, it could be 4 or 5 years for a very large system, then the more unlikely it is, or the more difficult it is to guarantee that you can take into account the environment in the future. And the final problematic assumption we have here is that at the early phases, the planning and requirements gathering, that's when I, as a client, am involved in the process, and we have an analyst who's talking to me, trying to tease out what exactly it is that I want. And there's an assumption here that you can capture what I want, and capture quite often in terms of written documentation. And this written documentation can then be handed off to coders, to testers, and from that, they can precisely recreate what it is that I tried to communicate initially. There's a problem here if the actual way of capture, if it isn't consistent, if it isn't unambiguous. And the problem with written language or natural language is that it is actually ambiguous. It is difficult to be precise in terms of a written natural language. So if we have something, a delivery date that's years away, the assumptions that Waterfall make break down immensely. It is very much more difficult further out to predict what the future is like. If it's going to take 2 to 3 years to actually create something, it probably means it's a medium or a large size project. That means that I'm going to find it remarkably difficult to be precise about what I require up front. And because then we're looking at a lot of features that need to be captured and recorded, the documentation will be large. So Waterfall doesn't particularly lend itself to large distant projects, or rather the assumptions that it makes are more likely to fall down then. It's not a necessary outcome, but it's quite a likely outcome. There's many examples of where, as mentioned, billions of pounds worth of money has been wasted commissioning software that whenever it gets to be delivered, either it's been delivered into a market that's not true nowadays, the things have moved on, or it doesn't actually end up capturing what it is the users wanted in the first place. Now, why has Waterfall persisted? Why has it actually been used so often when there's lots of sort of case history that it doesn't work? So there's a couple of reasons for that. On the surface, it comes across as being plausible. Whenever we introduced it in terms of the planning phase, the design phase, and capturing and then testing and deploying, it sounds perfectly reasonable. It is documentation heavy. It lends itself to planning. So if you are a manager in a large environment and somebody is coming along to you with large volumes of detailed documentation and Gantt charts that break things down to precise detail, it's very easy to assume, hey, this looks great. As long as we adhere to this particular schedule, we will be fine. So there's the attractiveness that it comes across as providing a reasonable plan. But the whole thing is prefaced on the assumption that you can follow that plan, that it will hold true. Unfortunately, that's where Waterful Model falls down. For most projects, and this is actually for most projects, it is an illusion to assume that you can say my budget is precisely this and things will precisely adhere to that deadline. That's generally not how the real world works. Requirements do change over time. And it means that you are dealing with things up front which is an estimate, a best guess, if you like, as to where or what it is you want to have created. And given the fact that most software is messy, it is much better then to use a software development approach that doesn't assume you have a perfect world, but rather one that is designed to be flexible, one that's designed to be adaptable, and one that's designed to cater to user requirements that can change, that can be uncertain. And that's where Agile and Lean approaches come into this. So, Agile approaches, how do they work? It's a fairly simple way they work, actually. They tackle uncertainty by delivering working software to the client on a frequent and a regular basis. So if you like, as opposed to having the waterfall model, which is one large cycle and it can be over a large period of time, if you were to chop that up into much smaller segments, let's say once every month, and once every month you're saying to the user, I'm going to listen to what you want, I'm going to do some design, I'm going to implement it, I'm going to test it, I'm going to deploy it. Then every single month, or every single 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever frequency you want, you're going back to the client and you're saying to the client, look, have a look at this, use this, tell me what you think about it. And what that means is that the client then has a chance to say very early, I didn't actually mean this, I wanted something that does that, or I've tried this out and actually it doesn't provide me with what I want. So they can help shape and direct the actual evolution of the project. So the whole Agile approach, very, very straightforward. You just chop things up into into smaller phases, and you're going back to the client and you're saying, okay, here's some more working software, here's some more, and getting their input into the process. So, but we'll have a look now at a few, if you like, foundational elements that sort of tease out a little bit more about how Agile works. We'll start off first of all with the Agile Manifesto. So this is well, it's a manifesto itself, so you can actually go and look at this online, and it tries to capture the essence of what Agile approaches are about. Lots of different types of Agile approaches, but these are the principles that underpin all of them, really. Now, the manifesto was put together in 2001, where you had a group of people who came together who were sort of, dissatisfied with a lot of how traditional software had went, but had themselves been experimenting with their own project management techniques and had got good success with it. And then sort of realized when talking to other people, hold on, you're finding success doing things the same way that I am. And if you like, the approaches that they had, grown, if you like, they then knitted them together under the notion of an Agile approach and produced a manifesto that tried to sum it up. So Agile Manifesto says that we are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Through this work, we have come to value. So this is the values of an Agile approach. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. I'll read the whole thing out, then we'll go over it. Working software over comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Responding to change over following a plan. And the bottom bit's important. That is, whilst there is value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. So everything that's shown here is valuable, but they're saying that some things are more valuable. So in particular, processes and tools. Yes, you need to have processes, you need to have tools that you follow by way of doing something. But that's not as important as getting interaction going between the developers, the designers, the clients. So interactions, getting people talking and working together, that's a more valuable thing than simply following a set of processes. Working software, that is more valuable than comprehensive documentation. So if you have a choice between getting a document submitted to the client or going to the client and saying, look, I developed a piece of software, always go for working software, or 99.9% of times go for working software. Customer collaboration. It is better to go to the customer and to say, how can we work together, than to try to tie down things within a binding contract. And it sort of gets into contract negotiation. It's sort of setting out, well, I will do this, you will do that, and we'll never sort of meet beyond this. But collaboration has the notion that it's a broader team. Everybody's working together towards some common goal. So responding to change over following a plan. And if you're using the Waterfall approach, where you have a plan set out for the whole thing, the tendency or the danger for a manager is when something tries to go off plan, they try to drag it back onto plan by way of sort of sequencing things. But sometimes you're dragging back onto plan for the wrong reasons. So Agile says, okay, if something changes, let's adapt and respond to that change. Let's be agile about it. So that's the manifesto. There's a few other principles that people have developed, and we'll have a look at those now. So related to the manifesto, we also have the Declaration of Interdependency. And it says we're a community of project leaders that are highly successful at delivering results. To achieve these results, and again, a number of things here, we'll have a look at each of them. They're all good characteristics of Agile approaches. We increase return on investment by making continuous flow of value our focus. Now, most of these we're going to have to restate them in terms of everyday language. In essence, what this one is getting at is that when they talk about continuous flow of value, that is effectively the frequent delivery of things to the client. So every, say, 3 weeks, we are going back to the client and we are giving them something that they view as valuable. For example, it's something a feature they wanted to get within their project, or something they said, we would like to see this, we would like to see that. And by continuously going back to the client and saying, here, have something else you find valuable, and repeating that, it lets the client see that, okay, I've given you money, and I'm not expecting, you're not promising me that in 2 years' time you will deliver on anything. But every 3-4 weeks, you are showing me something that I actually want to see. And that's a very helpful way of sort of cementing the relationship and keeping the client happy, that they know, yeah, things are moving forward. We deliver reliable results by engaging customers in frequent interactions and shared ownership. So the notion behind this is that you don't sort of work with the client at the start and then say, okay, I'll see you in a year's time when I deliver the software. Rather, you say that, okay, we're working together in developing this piece of software, so let's do that. Let's meet frequently. It's very much your software, we're developing it, but you have an interest in it, so let's collaborate together. And doing that gives much better results. We expect uncertainty and manage it through iterations, anticipation, and adaptation. So again, it says that we live in an uncertain world. Uncertainty is going to happen, and I mean, really, iterations, anticipation, adaptation. Basically, it says that you chop things up into smaller chunks. Whenever something happens, you adapt to it, and you expect change to occur. And really, that sort of mindset is really all that's needed. We unleash creativity and innovation by recognizing that individuals are the ultimate source of value and creating an environment where they can make a difference. Now, what on earth does that mean? It's a very simple idea. In essence, for software creation, it is the programmers, the designers, the clients. These are the people that make things happen. These are the people that make all of the difference. And if you're working in a company, it is the people that can provide the good ideas, that can go the extra mile. And a lot of the agile environments are ones that actually set out and value this. That say to people, okay, we're going to give you the freedom to make decisions. And if you give people that control, that flexibility, that freedom, you put your trust in them, and you do it well, that's almost an optimal setup. So it's much better to do this than to have a manager that tries to sort of dictate and control what everybody does down to a level of detail where they have no independence or control themselves. We boost performance through group accountability and results, for group accountability for results, and shared responsibility for team effectiveness. All that means is that everybody's in it together. So where there's a problem, it's a problem that the whole team faces. Where there is success, it is success that the whole team shares within. So it's not one person. And if you have that sort of team mentality where everybody sort of helps one another out, where everybody shares in the success, then again, that's the best way of getting that team to work most effectively. This last one, I always sigh when I see it. We improve effectiveness and reliability through situationally specific strategies, processes, and practices. What does that mean? All that really means is that if you want people to best work together in a team, get them together in the same space. And a lot of the agile work environments are set up so that people do have opportunities to talk to one another, to interact with one another. So if you want a team, get that team working together, give them an environment within which they can interact and collaborate. It's common sense. And whilst it is common sense, you think some work environments are still quite cubicle based, where everybody has their little sort of niche bit of desk and is maybe sort of screened off from other people, and you go and you work in your cubicle or your bit of your desk and you never interact with anybody else. That's not a good way of doing a team environment. Google, actually, if you look at Google workplaces, they're extremely good at doing this. They provide environments where there's lots of different areas where people can go and talk and plan and work, and so it's an environment within which teams can work effectively. Common sense, but actually a lot of environments still don't do it. Okay, so that's really all we want to say about Agile. We'll then go on and have a look now at Lean. So Lean, we talk about Agile and Lean, they are complementary approaches, and they quite often blend together, so that when people are developing software in an Agile approach, they're probably also pulling in some aspects of Lean. And if you hear people saying, oh, we develop software in a Lean approach, they're also pulling in aspects of Agile. But in some senses, they can be viewed separately in terms of the principles that underpin them. For Lean itself, it's a manufacturing concept, and it's a long-standing one. The company that made it famous was actually Toyota. So making cars, and they put into place a production system known as the Toyota production system for their sort of car manufacturing lines. It was incredibly successful in terms of the rate at which they could get cars coming out of it, and also the quality of the cars. They were all high quality. So a lot of people then sort of looked at it, and Lean's a good way of sort of characterizing it. In essence, what Lean manufacturing or Lean development approaches, they try to identify anything that is wasteful and then getting rid of it. So you're cutting out wasteful processes. So a lot of the emphasis in Lean is about, okay, how do we make things better, and giving everybody control or a say into making things better. And when we say better, we're talking about Lean, so we have wasteful processes, but they also, as part of this, mean, okay, what is of value to the client, to the user? And if there's something that isn't of value, so it could be a feature in your product that the customer doesn't really care about, then the Lean approach says, well, get rid of it. You don't care about it, customer doesn't want it, cut the thing out. So Lean characterizes it reasonably well. There's several principles that underpin Lean. So 1 to 5 over here. First one is defining value and mapping the value stream. So what does that actually mean? In essence, this means sort of working out what really matters to the client, and it sounds a sensible, obvious thing to say. Okay, work out what the client really wants. It always surprises me how much development doesn't do this, where you might have the designer or the developer going, well, I think this is useful, so I'm going to put it in. But they haven't actually gone to their users and said to the users, do you find this useful? Do you want it? What do you find useful? Tell me. So it helps not to make assumptions about what you think the user really wants, but actually to work with the user to understand quite carefully, well, what is of value. Second two, about creating flow and establishing pull. That's about the actual process of whatever it is, creating software, creating cars. And the Lean approaches are always about establishing a flow through it, so you don't have backlogs being created, you don't have one part waiting on another part, and there's a whole, depending on what you're manufacturing, a whole set of activities you can do by way of trying to make that smooth. The principle of pull is actually quite important, that people bring work to themselves, that they draw down work. But again, depends what you're doing, so I mean it does tie into the area. Last one is the pursuit of perfection, and that gets into the idea that everybody can make things better, and it doesn't matter what role they play, if it's a small, if it's a big role. Everybody says that, okay, if you're doing something and you think I can do this better, or if you're doing something and you think, why am I doing this? Do I need to do it? And there's an opportunity to make things, to improve it, then everybody is encouraged and given the opportunity and supported in doing that. That's the principles then that underpin Lean. So in terms of this project, there's a few things that are of particular interest to us. And One is the notion of defining value. So in the context of the project, ask what is going to provide maximum bang for your buck. What is going to provide maximum value to you? So your goal is to maximize the mark that you receive within the module. So you're going to decide how it is you're going to spend your time. And there's different things you could do to spend your time. So you might be going, okay, well, I've created an animation. I could spend this afternoon tweaking this animation, improving it, making it sort of slightly aesthetically better. Or I could spend this afternoon tidying up this particular class, doing a little bit of refactoring on it. Or I could spend this afternoon doing a design for another feature. So they're all things you could do, but always ask, what one is going to provide maximum return? What one's going to give you marks or give you most marks? Now, anything that's giving you marks is good, but if you find that you're doing something wasteful, it's taking up your time, it's consuming resource, but it's unlikely to give you marks. It doesn't map onto the marking scheme, then don't do it. And it's always good to sort of think and to take a step back and to ask, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? What return is this going to give me by way of my project? And that's why you should always sort of be looking at the marking scheme, understanding what are the characteristics and the things that we're looking for in a good quality project in terms of the design, the algorithms, the efficiency, the coding standards, and always doing things that tie in to that. Little side down at the bottom that value added, wasteful. There's also non-value added, and these can be things like legal requirements where you are obliged by law to include something within your project, but it's not necessarily something that the client actually would ever be that bothered about or would require if they had a choice. But it's just to say there's different types of reasons why you'd be adding things in. So one other slide on eliminating waste. The lean techniques, they identify several different types of waste. So you can see them over on the graphic. Things like defects, overproduction, so where you sort of make more than you actually need to make, and you've got to sort of warehouse and store it, and it's wasteful doing that. Waiting, where somebody's waiting for something to happen or for them to get a part or for somebody to do a bit of software and they're twiddling their thumbs until that wait condition is done. Non-utilized talent, you have people that are not being used to the fullness of their ability. Extra processing, doing more work that's really needed. Motion, well, okay, so unnecessary movements by people, e.g. walking, so again, that's getting people in a nice, good environment. Inventory, transportation, so there's lots of different types. Have to be contextualized in terms of software engineering. For us, it is genuinely useful to take that step back and to think, am I spending my time adding value to the project? Okay. Let's cut out the bull. Rather bold slide here. I'll show you now why I want to have a little aside based on all the things that we've talked about to this point in time. A lot of the slides, the previous ones when we were talking about Agile and talking about Lean, they had words like mapping the value chain, empowering the team, unleashing creativity, and other stuff like that in all honesty just makes me sigh. There's a danger that if you see these types of words, you're just going to dismiss it as management talk, hollow, meaningless management talk. And don't do that, because it's a real shame if you did. Agile and Lean, they are one of the big success stories where you've had during the Waterfall approach, like I said, billions and billions of pounds of wasted money. And the Agile and Lean techniques have shown that they generally do work. It's not 100%, but the success rate is remarkably good. And they work because they understand how people, either me as a client or me as a developer or me as a designer, how people actually think about things and how they can best work together. So it is a software development technique that works well with actual people. It's not an idealistic one that makes unrealistic assumptions. So try to tuck out all of the crap in terms of how it's actually expressed, and to sort of think, okay, what are the underlying principles? Why do we have this? What are the problems? What are people not doing? And why are we doing it better if we do it this way? So there is a lot of deep, meaningful content behind this, and it's all fairly simple about how we work. They do have a better track record, and it is very much worthwhile understanding how they work. If you do get how they work, and you can see, yes, I can see why this is a better approach to tech to get people to work together more effectively, then that is brilliant. That's the type of thing that's going to set you up well as a software developer in the future. And I suppose words of wisdom, in terms of our attempt at words of wisdom, embracing an agile and lean philosophy will maximize the marks you receive in your uni projects. So even though I am talking here about developing software and how software companies do it, if you adopt an agile and a lean approach to your modules at university, again, agile approaches, they're not only being used for software development. So a lot of software companies find that, it works fine for developing software, and they're then starting to roll it out to their, for example, HR teams. So it is a good team working strategy. So try, if at all possible, to apply these principles to how you approach your study at university. If you're serious in doing it, actually it will, in most cases, give you a beneficial return. It's going to help you get a higher mark. Okay, so some final points to round this particular talk off. Traditional waterfall approach, it makes a number of assumptions that can be true, but in a lot of cases simply are unrealistic. Agile approaches, they help because they say, okay, they're actually designed for an uncertain world. They don't make big steps. They take lots of small steps forward and get the client involved in helping shape those small steps. Lean helps because it says, let's look at what really, really, really matters. What does the client really want? Let's focus on that. And if there's anything wasteful that we're doing, let's cut that out. And they complement one another. If you put them both here, there's no reason why you can't combine them. And in fact, you get maximum benefit by combining them. So that's the first of our sort of 3 Agile talks. Next one, we'll have a look at Scrum as an example of an Agile technique that we'll be using some aspects of it on the module.